guys, welcome to Winsome Cottage Garden. My name is Hannah and I'm so glad you decided to join me today. We are in the city for this video. Instead of being outside, we're actually going to be inside today because it's a very gray old day. It has been raining most of the day, though it is quite warm. It's about 60 degrees, which is practically a heat wave for us. But yeah, it's been raining for basically the last couple days. Tomorrow there might be a little bit of ice mixed in as it dips a little cooler because we're just beginning to enter end of March, beginning of April. That being said, I'm so looking forward to spring. I am a little bit behind on seedlings starting. Now, I am typically the type of person who, as soon as that window of opportunity for planting starts, I start them. So tomatoes, peppers, a lot of times I'll have started them 3+ weeks before today. This year life really conspired against me and that wasn't possible. So I am really excited to finally be getting some seeds started. Now in this video, I think what I'm going to actually do is more of an unboxing style video to show you the seeds that I purchased this year. I have a pretty big seed collection that I do plant a good chunk of it. There's some varieties I've tried in past years that I won't this year just because of spacing. But I also always make time and space to try new varieties because you never know what you're going to like better unless you try it. So I thought I'd show you the seeds that I purchased this year, as well as kind of talk you through how I plan out my garden, my vegetable garden specifically, and some of my flowers. If you guys have followed along on this channel a while, you know that I have a garden here in the city, which is like more of an urban garden or smaller yard that we make the most of my raised beds. I have a raised bed vegetable area as well as some containers on my driveway and incorporated into landscape beds as well to maximize vegetable production. And then my parents are living at what was our family cottage up north. And they in the past have done a lot of container gardening on their deck. And one of the big things that we're going to be working on this year is actually shifting to a more permanent vegetable garden now that they're living there full time. We had hoped to kind of construct the garden this spring, but some other projects have kind of popped up. And now we're not sure exactly when it's going to be completed, but it won't be for this growing season. So to compromise, we are still going to be building it. Maybe it'll be this fall, maybe it'll be next spring, trying to figure that out right now as we are factoring in some other projects that you guys will be brought along for. So instead what we're going to do, because some of the container gardening last year didn't work very well, especially because chipmunks discovered the tomatoes and the strawberries and the beans. So basically the only things they left alone were the cabbages and some of the peppers, which did not do super well. I think they got a bit dry and then they never really recovered. You might see some dogs behind me. I literally, right before this video, tidied everything up, and then they came through and did this. So I said, you know what, it's a losing battle. They'll do what they'll want to do. But anyway, back to the real purpose of this video. So what we're going to do this year is kind of a compromise because we do really want to try and get things in the ground with a richer soil that they can go in with a larger soil reservoir than some of the container gardens we've used in the past. We're going to do a small in-ground garden that can be repurposed when we do build the bigger raised bed garden. Because both my parents, I mean, they're young still, but they are thinking further ahead and know that as they age, they want to make sure that the beds are at a height that they can comfortably harvest them. So eventually the raised bed garden will be quite tall, for the most part, quite tall beds, except for things like tomatoes and whatnot. So they don't have to bend down too much when we're harvesting or planting or any of that jazz. So that's going to be a project for a later date. But this year some of the varieties I bought specifically were for my mom because she really likes the paste tomatoes and doing stuff like canning and whatnot. And she's going to have a much larger garden space than they have in the past. So I start all her vegetables for her. For the most part, we did buy a couple last year and we will still buy some this year from our favorite local nursery, but by the most part, I start most of our vegetables. So with that introduction, let's talk about the seeds that I purchased this year. I have bought my seeds mostly from 2 different locations. I did this year purchase a couple of seeds from Lowe's, which actually aren't here, where I bought 2 packets of alyssum and 2 packets of marigolds. Now, I've bought different packets before where I'm more particular about varieties, and I've decided I'm not really particular about those varieties, so I just went with run-of-the-mill at Lowe's, especially because I had a gift card there. So I bought soil to start the seeds and the seeds. But in general, when I'm particular about varieties, there are two main places that I go that I purchase seeds from this year: Johnny Seed Company and Baker's Creek Seeds. Now, one of the things I love about Johnny Seed Company is that they have a ton of information on the packets of the seeds. And if they don't have it on the packets, they'll send you a pamphlet of information about how to best propagate whatever you purchase from them. How I store all this information. Now, you guys probably don't know this about me, but I am a data geek. So one of the things I do, which I haven't yet done for these, which I will be doing after this video, is I input all the varieties of seeds I currently have into a spreadsheet with all the information that I need. So I don't need to go pull up that little packet to see something. I can go to my spreadsheet. I have a spreadsheet for flower seeds and a spreadsheet for vegetable seeds. One of the things that I ran into this year is that I ran out of seeds. That past me wasn't so diligent in letting present me know I didn't have. Usually I'll keep the seed packet and put it on my fridge so I remember to order it again, and I think I just recycled them this year. So then it came to start seeds and I realized I was out of some really key things that I needed. So a couple of these are reorders, but most of them are brand new seeds to me that I'm really excited to try this year. Let's start with flowers. Beauty before sustenance. One seed packet that I got from Baker Creek this year was Status. Now, one of the things you have to say about Baker Creek is their packets always have beautiful photos on them. It's a visual feast for the eyes. Their information leaves a little something to be desired. Like this, for example, doesn't even really tell you when to start it. Like how far in advance of your last frost date should you start these. These are things that you could potentially, depending on your growing zone, start out in the yard. And if you're in a zone 9 through 10, which is quite warm, this is actually a perennial. But the good news is I did purchase this last year from Johnny Seeds. They were sold out by the time that I went to order my seeds this year because I did that very late. And I decided to do it with this. So this is Pacific Mix Status. I love them. They're a great filler flower. They add like a burst of color and they are phenomenal dried flowers. I pulled most of my plants this year, but I inadvertently left one pot that had a couple Status among other things. And there was a little yellow piece that was bright yellow, like looked like a fresh bloom, but obviously wasn't throughout the whole winter. So I never pulled it out because I enjoyed looking at it so much. But one of my favorite things to have in bouquets is a filler flower to kind of round it out and like add a little sparkle here and there. This year, one of the things that you're going to notice very quickly that I'm expanding more than any other, I'm going to be planting a lot more celosia. I love celosia. Last year was the first time I grew it, and it was just something, I don't know why I grew it, but I had seen it and I thought, oh, that's really pretty. And I realized it was one of my favorite things to include in the yard. I did 4 varieties last year. One that kind of looked like brains, for lack of a better word, and then some spikes. So I'll be regrowing those again. And then I'm also going to be adding, and I'll throw these up on the screen. I'm not going to add too much information because we'll get that when I plant these in a little while, but we're doing Selloway Terracotta, Chief Persimmon, Flamingo Feather Celosia, Flamingo Purple, and then Kramer's Lemon Lime, and Pampas Bloom. So I'll tell you right now though, celosia seeds are very small. So what you'll often find in seed packets like this, which is the case with these, is that they actually come inside the packet is a baby packet that has the seeds. I'm not going to open it, but you can kind of see they're itty bitty. So when I plant these, I keep them nice and tied up. These seeds that inevitably I will use more than I intend to because they're so small. But I'll probably be able to just split this amongst 2 years because this packet contains a minimum of 100 seeds. So keep that in mind. That little thing I showed you had at least 100 seeds in it. Other flowers, Double Click Cosmos. Now this is one that I've grown for many years. I love them. They seem to be very big and fluffy, and I like this, just a mix of colors in my cosmos. And then the only other purchases I made with flower seeds this year are zinnias. One of these is a restock, Cinderella Peach, which I don't think I've purchased since 2020. So you can use seed packets for multiple years. They don't expire per se. If any, the only thing that might happen is your germination rate might go down a little bit. So if it's something that you used to sow 2 per cell, maybe sow 3 or 4 as they get a little older, but don't throw out seeds. Like, I mean, try them first. So Cinderella Peach, I ran out, repurchased. And then I decided to add 2 to the Queen Lime series. Queen Lime Orange to the mix and Queenie Lemon Peach. The whole Queen Lime series together is going to be gorgeous. So those are my new flower seeds. So some of them are technically reorders. Other new seeds. Should we start with Baker Creek again? Because they have the beautiful ones, so they don't need to pop photos up on. You have your classic carrot. This is a Danvers half long, 126. You can buy a lot of carrots. This is actually specifically for my mom and dad. I have a rainbow carrot mix that I'm really excited to try. But they were like, please just buy us orange carrots. So I did. I've grown these before and I really like them. One thing that's kind of fun about Baker Creek is they give you a free seed, I think for every $35 you spend, which I think I spent under that. So I only got one. And this year was a Japanese wasabi. I don't know if I'm going to grow this, to be honest. Mostly because it's a radish, but it's like a spicy radish, and I don't know if that's up my alley. Maybe I'll grow 1 or 2 just to try. We'll see. Depends on how motivated I am. But it's really pretty. I'll say that much. Actually, I purchased 2 tomatoes that are actually my 2 favorite tomatoes to grow. For like an heirloom slicer variety, the Paul Robeson. They are like they're not quite a purple tomato, but they're darker. Let's see. They're darker than normal. You can see that. These have the best taste. It's just so flavorful. They're in general, like, they're pretty productive. I love them. Every once in a while, Baker Creek will stop carrying things. So I bought 2 just to ensure that I have an extra year if that happens, and I can then try to save seeds. But this is genuinely one of my favorite tomatoes of all time. My favorite cherry tomato of all time is the Napa Chardonnay cherry tomato. They're a very picky tomato to start. You can see that they are like a beautiful lemony color, and they are super sweet, which is one of the things that I enjoy about them. They are very thin skinned, which means if you have a hint of rain in the forecast, go harvest them right away. Likewise, when you are starting, they are super sensitive to water. I do not, like, of all my tomato seedlings, I basically try to almost dry them out completely before I water them, and then I only give them a little bit, because every time that I water them the same way that I water my other seedlings, they have either dampened off or they just sometimes tomatoes do something kind of odd where they like form crystals, if this makes sense to anybody, like on the stalk and then on the leaves, because they're getting too much water, and then it slowly kills them. So you have to be very careful about your watering when we sow these. Also purchased my favorite bush bean from Baker Creek, which is the Blue Lake Bush Bean 274. We love bush beans. These guys are super productive. I don't know if it's like an area by area things. I do think these are more Midwest focused, but these are by far the best. I do a ton of bush beans. My mom wants to do a ton of bush beans. We freeze extra. So I have 3 whole packets because I had absolutely none left, and we'll probably go through these. And the other one that I did purchase, and this is another reorder, is Green Beauty Snow Peas. These snow peas, I've tried a number of snow peas, and these are massive and big and just so delightful. So really excited. Now these I have kept seeds from. This is just more of a supplement, and I think I have a handful left from last year. So their germination does go down, and they're a low germ, so you might see every once in a while you might see on a packet something like this where it says they've overstuffed it because of low germ. So this germ rate is 73%. That's not that great. So they put more in. But yeah, those are the items I purchased from Baker Creek this year. I think all of them were reorders because they're favorites, and I could not purchase them elsewhere. Because the one thing I'll say about Baker Creek, they have a lot of great varieties. And I'll also say, I have a lot of Baker Creek seeds already that I still have seeds left that I will be planting. So these are not just the only things I'm planting. These are just the new seeds that I'm super excited about, whether they're because old favorites have returned or something new for me to try. But I have a lot of seeds from Baker Creek that I do enjoy because they have some more unique items. They're great for heirloom seeds. Last seeds that I have are from Johnny's. Some of these are specifically for my mom. Some of these are new varieties. I have never actually grown the Sun Golds. I've heard they are the best. So I'm going to grow one Sun Gold and one Napa Chardonnay. And then we'll see which one is the best because they're both yellow tomatoes. Yellow tomatoes tend to have a higher sugar content. They tend to be sweeter. But I've heard really good things about these. So I thought that I would grow those. This one is for my mom. It is a heirloom tomato called Cipolla's. Pride. I'm not quite sure how to say that. But it's specifically a great tomato for canning. It's a paste tomato, so it's one that my mom's getting. I have another thing of San Marzanos, which is in general our favorite canning tomato that I've only got a handful of seeds left, so I needed some more. A new one this year that I haven't grown, but I haven't grown from seed before, but I've definitely purchased tomato plants before I started doing my own seeds, is a brandy wine tomato, which is more of, my understanding is it's more of a like heirloom slicer type tomato. And those are, in general, those are going to be the main tomatoes I'm growing. I have a couple other varieties. I'm going to be growing one Dr. Weishi's. I don't know how you say that. I'll probably grow one Abe Lincoln. I will also grow one and some other cherry tomato varieties. I haven't fully decided. But then my mom basically only wants one Paul Robeson, one red cherry, and then the rest are paste tomatoes so that she can really put them up because she wants to make sure she has ample supply this year because they ran through their tomatoes they put up this year very, very quickly, and she doesn't want that to happen again. Now, the next couple things are super exciting to me because I am redoing the experiment this year with the grow bags on my driveway. Last year was not as successful as it could have been, and I think that was mostly user error. So this year I'm going to be a lot more circumspect about what I'm doing. I'm going to be planting less plants. I'm going to be monitoring the water a lot more, and I'm going to be planting them early and starting them inside. Now, the good news is, I don't know if I've said this yet, my last frost date's always away. When it comes to starting seeds and like frost tender plants, your zone doesn't matter as much as when your first frost date is. The best place to go is to Google your zip code or a large metropolitan area near you and just say when's the last frost date. One place that usually pops up is Master Gardener Extension programs. For me, we have one based out of Michigan State that has a whole ton of literature. And they have this big graph that basically says by metropolitan area, the likelihood percentage of you experiencing a frost or it being your final frost. Now, this is one thing where the city last frost date very much differs from the cottage's last frost date. However, for both, I'm going to be starting them at the same time, and that just means that the cottages will probably be a little bit bigger by the time that I plant them. I just up-pot them. So that works out for me. For you, you might decide if you are doing those two kind of growing that you stagger your plantings. I don't really have the patience for that, if I'm being honest. So my city's last frost date is, last possible frost date, generally speaking, is May 27th. It's pretty late. So usually by that time, I'll be watching the weather like a hawk. And that means I have a lot of stuff out that can handle some cooler temperatures. However, a lot of flowers will be out. My dahlias will probably be in the ground. Any lettuces that I may have started inside, a lot of times I'll just start them outside. Beans will be planted outside before then, that kind of thing. However, for both peppers and tomatoes, I generally don't put those outside overnight until the overnight temperatures are up in the 50s. I've heard, and I found this to be true, that when your plants experiences those cooler temperatures, it can stunt them. That really can affect their productivity. whether it's just because they're such a slow grower or it hurts their flowers or whatever. So generally speaking, I won't put those out for 2 weeks following the last frost date. It's definitely after Memorial Day by the time I put those out, and a lot of times it can be even the first or second week of June. It really just depends on the weather. Some years we have really warm weather and it looks great. Some years June is a slog. We'll have to see what happens this year. Now for the cottage, they are actually really hard to calculate what their like last possible frost date is, because they're odd geology, which I know I've spoken before about the fact that they're close to Lake Michigan, which makes it more temperate. They are not really near a metropolitan area, so I found 2 near cities, which are like they're smack dab in the middle, and the difference between their last frost dates is 2.5 weeks. So I just kind of put it in the middle and we watch it very closely. This will be the first year we've done a garden at scale, other than like some of the container gardens. So we'll just have to kind of play it by ear. Their last possible frost date is June 14th. And then their first possible frost date is October 10th. Now, some years, including last year, they didn't get a hard frost until way after we did in the city. So they had some gorgeous looking plants up until like November, because they just hadn't been killed off. Now, it was cool at night. So like peppers, tomatoes, they were done skis. They were not producing. Sometimes also if you have actual fruit on the plants and it gets into those cold temperatures, the texture and the flavors change a little bit in a way that it's not always the best. But so they have a pretty short growing period. We have a similar first frost date here in the city, which is like mid-October. So neither of us have quite long growing periods. So that's why starting seeds early in general is really important, so that once they do go outside, they can hit the ground running. That little tangent aside, I started saying one of the things that I'm still doing again this year is my squash tunnel planting in grow bags on my driveway, but I am going to be monitoring it a little bit more. And I have picked some better varieties that I think will be productive, but also definitely have fruit that can be sustained by the trellis. So I still have some stuff that I'm using. I'm still going to be doing the spaghetti squash. I'll still do the acorn squash and walnut squash and some of the melons, but I did purchase 3 new varieties of pumpkins that I'm pretty excited about. Weedy Little, which are those really cute ones that you've seen. They're pretty small. I also have Casparita, which is a really pretty small white pumpkin similar to the Weedy Littles, and a Cinnamon Girl, which these are slightly larger than both of those, but still kind of on the smaller side of pumpkins, which I'm excited to grow myself. They're ones that I'm definitely going to be painting this fall if we get a good amount. I have a lot of kiddos in my life that I'll bring over or give to their adults to have fun with, but I think it'll be really fun. I also have some Blaze pumpkins that I will grow again, and zucchinis on the squash area. So, and then the last 2 things that I did purchase, and both of these I think were for my mom. One, the irony, I purchased some Salanova lettuce mix. I don't know if you guys have tried different lettuce mixes. I have. And I come back to the Salanova every time. I absolutely love it. I think it's a great mix. I know it's like a hybrid that is proprietary to Johnny's. I genuinely think it's one of the better mixes you can purchase. I bought these because I couldn't find mine. And I was like missing a ton of leafy greens. Couldn't figure out where they were. Thought maybe I must have finished them and just forgot. And then the day after I purchased these, I went up to the cottage. And I found all my seeds that I'd apparently given to my sister to sow up there for like a second crop, and they didn't. And they didn't give me my seeds back. The gall. But now I have enough. So these are pelleted though, which can sometimes affect productivity in consequent years. So depending on what the other ones are like, I'll probably plant these first. And the other thing that I purchased is a Primo Vantage F1 hybrid cabbage. We do have a Dutch flat cabbage that I'll be growing from Baker Creek that I purchased in recent years, but that's specifically for my mom and dad because they love those and they want to grow those. And I think that that's probably something a little better suited to their climate than some of the stuff that I've grown. I like cabbage too, don't get me wrong. They just take up a lot of space. And so I am more picky about my space. Speaking of space, it's a great transition to show you how I plan out what I'm planting where. And so just like I am a data geek, I am a planner and I take things to the slight extreme. I also should explain that part of what I do in my real world job is I do a lot of graphic design stuff. So the program I'm about to show you isn't actually it's not landscape related. I'm just a communications director who happens to have some skills in InDesign, Adobe InDesign, which is like a graphic design program that I have done a scaled drawing of all of my vegetable garden. And for the last several years, I've used it to plan what's going where, which helps me determine how many seeds to start. I have not yet created this for the cottage, though. What I'm probably going to do this fall is, because Adobe InDesign is like a product that I love it. If you've got the skills and you've got access to it, I highly encourage you to use it. I use it for this. But I've also used things like Canva, which is an online, you can get a free account there, which lets you do a lot of stuff. It's a little harder to do. There isn't quite as much freedom in the InDesign, but I think when we do get to the point that we're finalize the design for the cottage garden and we'll be planning our first garden, I'm going to build that in Canva, because that's something my parents have access to if they want to play around with it, or instead of letting me decide what goes in there with their input. But it's something that's also accessible to all. So with that being said, let me show you my garden and how I plan what's going where. Before I show you my garden, you need to know it's a little bit extra. I built this a couple years ago. I've used this since I think 2020, and we've been able to keep those designs to see in general. Every once in a while there's in the moment changes where things ended up. And I love it. It's just the way my brain works. So I thought I'd share it with you, and maybe it inspires you to do something like this. So if you're ready, this is how I plan my garden. I'll link the video playlist below that shows my city vegetable garden, so you can check out what we did in this space last year. But this is a pretty good representation. Now, it's not 100% perfect. I am in no way a landscaping architect that can map these things out. Those kind of skills really amaze me, but it helps me enough to kind of pick how things look. So this is a way that when I'm planning, I actually use a grid, which I'll pop on right here. Each of these squares are about a foot. So as I am planning my spacing, this kind of helps me figure out, okay, is that space big enough for this and whatnot. Inevitably, this is like mostly to scale. I will say that it's probably a tiny bit smaller in real life, like just a little. So I usually try to plan to be a little bit more generous in my space. This is what we did in this space last year. The other thing that's not quite to scale is where the shed is, obviously, though, and where things are on my driveway. So I just have them all here so I can print this on 11 by 17 piece of paper, and then it becomes kind of like the plan that you refer to as you're out and about. Or I pull it up on my iPad before I go outside. So this is what we ended up planting last year. Let me unveil what we're going to be planting where in 2023. Okay, let's start on the driveway. One of the things that you're going to notice right away is that I am still doing a spring salad mix. I actually have heat coils buried in both of these that I will probably be plugging in the next week or two and putting ranunculus out. Now, I have learned that the ranunculus basically go until like June, July here. And even then they might go a little bit longer. I'm hoping by putting them on the driveway, the heat, because that is a sun catchment area, the heat will cause them to behave like they should. Last year, I never ended up pulling them until the fall because they never died. Like, you're supposed to wait till they yellow and the bulb absorbs their energy. They just didn't do that last year. So I'm going to pop them on the driveway. Hopefully the heat zaps some of their energy, makes them actually go dormant. And what I'm going to do instead is plant them around where I'm going to plant the peppers. So I'm literally going to put the cages in there and then plant around it so that with peppers, they'll cross over a little bit, but they'll still be baby peppers then. And by the time the big peppers get big, it'll be time to pull out the corms. And I don't think it'll disrupt the root system all that much. At least that's what my theory is. And I'm going to try it out 1 year. And if it's a mistake, I won't do it again. But you'll be able to see that the cornito peppers are back. Corbacci are back. Those are the really long, thin red ones. Those are from Baker Creek. Delightful. I also have, I'm going to be doing a baby bell pepper. My mom, spoiler alert, I think is getting 3 of those because they like those. And I do Dispania Spanish mammoth pepper, which is probably my favorite pepper we grow. It is like a red pepper on steroids, and I just absolutely love it. Now, what that means is I'm not actually going to be growing any red peppers other than the Corbaci and the Dispania. They take forever to get red in my area. I'm going to be growing some green peppers, but I'm kicking the red pepper this year because I think there were a couple of peppers last year that I just squished a tiny bit too much. But I have a second cornito next to my green, and then I have a second baby bell, a shishito, and a jalapeno. So I'm not going to be growing Uncle Jim's pepper this year, but maybe in the future. Still on the driveway, if we look over here, I'll have 2 zucchinis in the front, a butternut squash, spaghetti squash, watermelons. Oh, actually, you know what? I think I did this before I bought pumpkins. Probably going to do a Cabbage here. And I will double these guys up because they're quite large, and then I'll train the Cabbage to go up the thing because the zucchinis are technically a bush style zucchini plant. Fordham Hook is the type I use. I use a Fordham Hook zucchini and then a golden Fordham Hook zucchini, which is similar to what you can buy in a store as a crookneck squash, but it's not an actual crookneck squash. But I actually really like the yellow better than the I like the yellow better than I like the green, but both are great. So this is what's going to be on the trellis, which is really over here, but my paper wasn't long enough. So the other thing that's going to be a difference is I'm not going to be planting potatoes this year in that long skinny bed behind my shed. I really thought about it long and hard because I enjoy growing potatoes. It's kind of like digging for gold. And last year I think I made a couple mistakes that impacted my yield, but as I think about where I want to put my time and energy this year, I'd much rather have a lot more zinnias here and growing in a better environment. It's not something I see strictly. My neighbors will see it, so they'll get to enjoy it. But then I also will have absolutely no qualms cutting them back there when they're kind of out of sight and not so visible. Sometimes they look so beautiful, you don't want to cut them. I'm not going to have that issue. So this is going to be where my zinnias are. They're going to get more sun. I think they're going to like this better. And I'd rather have zinnias than potatoes. It's the sad truth of it. So we move up, we're making a slight shift, and then we're doing a huge bed of bush beans, potentially 1 cabbage. Haven't fully decided. And then I will use one of my tripod teepees for sugar snap peas. This is slightly shadowed by my shed, which means that I find that it's a nice place to plant these things. It's also kind of convenient because I can harvest these bush beans back here and it's not so much bent over. I think that'll be fun. I'm also doing some here, and I might decide instead of one of these bush beans that I plant some flowers. Haven't fully figured it out yet. But I'm going to hold some dahlias in here. The other big change, I'm not doing tomatillos. They didn't like me and I didn't like them. And I don't think I knew what I was doing. But I've decided I'd rather buy salsa verde than attempt to make it. So I'm going to still use, I have a couple big dinner plate varieties that I'm going to plant in the bed and still use the trellises to help stake them up. Because they can get quite large and unwieldy. And I think that'll be really pretty. And it'll make it a lot easier to walk around here. Because I don't know if you guys remember, they got kind of dicey in some areas, and I have yet to learn my lesson about what to plant where, and I hope this year I have. The other thing I am considering doing, I haven't fully decided, but I might end up lifting the strawberry plants I have here and putting them in my green stock, and then use this as in-ground space for more flowers, is the thing. You'll note I have a lot more flowers here than I have in the past, and to be frank, it's because I don't need, especially with my parents having a larger growing space, I can devote more space to flowers, which brings me personal joy. So this could potentially be lifted and put in as more flowers or more of something. Haven't fully decided. In my 2 big horse troughs in the garden, I have cattle panels along the path back, and I will be doing 4 tomatoes. You will notice another change. I used to have a side one here. I'm going to be pulling that out this year and only doing tomatoes there. to try and make it a little easier to get around. I'm learning lessons as we go on. So this will be where my leafy greens are. I'll do some succession growing there. There's going to be a couple other areas for them as well. But right now I've got my Napa, 3 Pauls, Abe, blueberries, one of the purple ones I'll be planting, a yellow Dr. Wishies, and a Jasper cherry in this area. The other thing you'll note, I do not have tomatoes along here, which I've done in years past. I've decided to be more selective on where they're going. It's long and short of it. The other side, we're mirroring our cabbage because they are majestic, and I'll grow 2. And then I've got snow peas and bunching onions, as well as a very small thing of carrots of my rainbow carrots. In this back corner, it's a little more shaded, so they'll survive a little bit better in our growing area. And I have some space here for ranunculus and anemones if I don't have enough space in the main bed. And then I'll just devote this to them. I have cucamelons back here, but I don't know if that's where they're gonna live, to be honest. So as we journey over here, this is the other growing space on my like raised area. I don't know, what should I call that area? But kind of like the upper garden. So this is like the upper garden. And we have this big bed where I've got 2 San Marzanos and a Juliet. And then another San Marzano and carrots. This might end up being dahlias. I'm going to do some snow peas and cucamelons and pole beans. I have those from last year. And then this, I said, mahogany splendor hibiscus. We're going to change this right now. Dahlias is where they're going. So that plan is actually one that I did work out in January. I thought I would record it and share it with you then. Maybe together we can plan out my garden live next year, but I have got that plan pretty much in place. My parents, we don't know exactly what this kind of temporary bed situation is going to look like. I only have the number of plants my mom's asked me to start. So I'm going to start those, and if for some reason I end up with too many plants, I am sure I'll find people to give them to. Anyway, that's kind of it for this video. I wanted to show you, before I dive into some of the actual seeding, how I plan things out. I know the way I do it is a little bit extra, and it's probably the 3rd or 4th time I've said that today. You don't need this to plan out your garden. To be honest, plants want to grow. Like, there's, even last year when I had some failures, when I planted some things way late, I thought, you know what, let's take a gamble. Some of it didn't work out, some of it did. So plants want to grow. If you want to try something, you don't need a fancy computer program that you've built your garden. This is just how I love to get through the winter, to be honest. And it helps me think and organize and know, since I am starting a large volume of seeds, what I need to start when. Speaking of starting, I'm going to be starting a lot of seeds this week, mostly peppers, tomatoes. I will also figure out the flowers I'm growing. I'll bring you along that journey with me. Outside is still pretty bleak. Tomorrow's supposed to rain all day, but I am keeping my fingers and my toes and everything crossed because it looks like I'll be able to get outside Sunday to do some spring cleanup. I do a lot of fall cleanup, so there's not a lot to do outside. I think it's enough that I could probably get the whole backyard done in a day and maybe the front yard. Now, I'm probably not going to do all of the pruning that I would normally do, but I'm going to do a chunk of it, and I'm also going to spray my apple tree and crabapple tree because I didn't get my emergent spray done yet, but the buds are just swelling, so this is the best time to do it. It'll be the last thing that I do in the next video you see. So that video is coming up. I'm not sure how many videos I'm going to be posting a week. It's not going to be a set schedule, but it'll be between 1 and 2. So you'll always be able to count on videos on Saturdays. So I hope you guys come back. This one was more informational for those of you who are just starting, or they're thinking about it, or you were looking for ways to how to begin planning a garden. Maybe there's something in here that you found that you could adapt. I really encourage anyone who's been thinking about planting a garden to go ahead and do it. Now, what that one thing that I don't think really is captured in my garden planning drawing is the fact it's kind of nook and cranny gardening. I have a really small city plot. I think it's something like less than 7,000 square feet for my land and house. Like the whole bundle is 7,000 square feet. And that's not including my front yard. This is really like a dead area a couple years ago behind a shed that I turned into a raised garden bed. the beds I have incorporated into the upper bed in the backyard here, that wood actually came from a platform I tore out that used to hold a laundry machine that I don't have anymore. Didn't want to throw the wood away, so I, popped it together. It's also on top of a big stump of a tree we had to have taken out. So that raised bed is making that usable space where I don't know if a tree or anything like that really would have been able to combat the root system that was in this. This tree was probably about 50 inches across. It was dying, so it had to come out. It was presenting a danger to my own house and others. It's using space that was unusable before and turning it into something productive that brings joy. Whether it's just a small patch of your garden or it's something where you're nook and crannying like me, or you're growing on your driveway, anyone can garden. And it just takes getting started. So hopefully you'll follow along on this garden's journey. You can say you were here at its inception this year, and you'll be able to come back next time. It'll either be the next video or the one after that we'll finally get some seeds started. And you'll be able to see them, and we'll track them, because there's nothing special as when that first seed pops out for the season. Even though by the time they actually go outside, you might be a little tired of them. So anyway, I'm so glad that you guys decided to join me today, and hopefully you'll stick around. If you like this video or you want to follow this garden's journey, check out these videos here so you can see some of what it looked like last year. Make sure to like and subscribe so you can come back next year and continue watching the garden grow with me. I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye-bye.